today's webinar. Today we will be looking at LexisNexis as an organization and more, and perhaps more specifically, HotDocs and NebDocs. As noted, today's webinar is called NebDocs, the Key to Efficiency, Profitability, and Client Satisfaction. And the objective of today's webinar is to introduce you to, or if you already have some experience with it, explain document assembly and document assembly as practice. A system that that the NebDocs Association has partnered with is the HotDocs system, and we'll spend time talking about how that can be used as part of your daily practice to, again, deliver efficiency to your office, profitability, and perhaps most important, client satisfaction. We are using the GoToMeeting webinar. If you do have questions, we can answer those questions through the chat window, so feel free to use that, and I can answer these questions as we go along. As far as today's agenda, as mentioned, I'll provide an overview of LexisNexis. We'll talk about the why, if you will, of document assembly. Why is document assembly an option, particularly as it relates to the creation of new documents as it currently stands. We'll spend time on HotDocs market, but perhaps the bulk of our time, or perhaps more importantly, the bulk of our time will be spent demoing the NebDocs product, so you can see how it can be used within your practice to make, as I say, you more efficient, profitable, and deliver client satisfaction. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start. Just a quick overview, a snapshot of LexisNexis. LexisNexis is think of it as an umbrella or a collection of legal and accounting practice management software. It was founded in 1983. We have our headquarters in San Diego with offices in Virginia, Utah, Toronto, Scotland, and Ohio, which is where I am. Essentially, at its heart, and I'll show you this in a moment, it is a private cloud provider allowing legal practices and accounting practices to host their content, not just their content, but their software services in a private cloud. We have 10 data centers across the US and one in Canada. There are 475 plus employees around the world, and we have over 1.5 million users worldwide. And we work with a variety of partners, including Microsoft, QuickBooks, Intel, etc. As mentioned, LexisNexis is essentially a collection of software and practice management software providers. As you may be familiar with Amicus Attorney and Abacus Law and Amicus Online. These primarily serve the legal markets. Commercial Logic, Result CRM, and Office Tools are primarily for the accounting space. APX is a payment exchange that allows attorneys to, processes, I should say, transactions, credit card transactions from clients to the attorney so that you can get paid. And then more recently, LexisNexis acquired HotDocs. I came over as part of the HotDocs acquisition. HotDocs is one of the oldest and most well-known document assembly engines in the legal space. So when you think about document assembly, why does HotDocs exist? Well, there are a variety of reasons, and it all stems from what I'm about to show you here. The most common practices currently used to create a document. You can find a document. In other words, let's search through my older files on my desktop and find a will that I might have used for a previous client. I'll then rename that will, and then I'll modify it to meet the client's needs. However, with this find, rename, modify process, or the current process, there are a number of issues, and it can cause issues for legal professionals, including errors of omission. Let's say I use an older will from previous client, and I may forget to include data from my current client. There's also the errors of inclusion. Maybe there's some clauses or phrases or components from that prior will that after I renamed it and modified, I accidentally left in. I shouldn't have done that, and it affects the quality and the outcome of the document I'm providing for my current client. There's the reliance on individuals' memory. Oh, did I take that clause out? Did I add that clause? Did I properly represent what the client was requesting? Having used an older agreement or an older document, does that carry over, and did I remember to make the changes? We may miss items that should have been changed. One of the most common, you could argue, is the inclusion of, or the missing components when it comes to renaming pronouns. You may have had a client that was masculine before and a female client now, and and when you're going through the renaming process, the modification process, I should say, you've left in the she instead of he, or he instead of she. Same, it's one of those things where you with this current process, you do miss items that should have been changed. It could be that your starting document is compromised. Let's say I'm using a will or a guardianship form, whatever the scenario may be, that is several years old. Am I sure that I'm using the most recent version of that form? So that's what we say when we mean the document, starting document is compromised. It could be out of date. And in some firms, you may have multiple versions of a standard document. So let's say a law firm has their preferred divorce document that they would use for their clients. Well, it may be that attorney number one has his or her preferred version of a standard divorce form for that form. It could be that attorney number two uses a slightly different version of that standard document. The point being that there are a variety of issues that can arise when you use the find, rename, modify process to create a document. So that's where HotDocs, and that's where document assembly, I should say, comes into play. Document assembly, as we define it, particularly through the HotDocs software, allows the individual or the organization to create templates that can be used over and over again to shorten the time for document preparation. It allows the compliancy and consistency across the documents, and because it is a standardized document, it increases the efficiency of your practice. The way it works is this: you take a standard set of a single document or standard set of documents. Again, let's use the will example. And what you do is, with the HotDocs software, you convert them into templates with variable text fields. And those variable text fields are represented by the yellow components here in this graphic. These variable text fields could be something along the lines of the client name, or the address, or the gender. Again, a whole variety of variants there. As a legal professional using the HotDocs software, again, you can apply your knowledge of the law, your knowledge of documents, and identify those elements which will change frequently. Where the software comes into play is that it produces an interview, what we call an interview wizard. So if you've ever used, say, TurboTax, for example, it's the same concept where you're simply entering answers when prompted. And I'll show you this in a moment when we get to the HotDocs or the NebDocs product. But basically, you're entering data into the template through this HotDocs wizard. The HotDocs software then marries those answers that you've provided in this interview wizard with the underlying text that won't change. And so you have, in a matter of seconds, a completed document. One of the great things about the HotDocs system is that with the answers you provided in the interview, you can reuse those answers in subsequent document creation. So for example, if you're doing an adoption for your client, chances are you'll probably want to change the will since there's a new member of the family. Well, with the HotDocs system, instead of having to re-enter the client data for the adoption forms, you simply take the answers that were provided and you can apply them to the divorce forms, or excuse me, to the family will forms. So you've saved yourself time and you're ensuring consistency across the documents. So this process, and what I'm showing you here, is if you were to create templates from your own library of forms or documents. So you would be the author, you would be the creator. The HotDocs market system takes this a bit further in the sense that it is the marketplace for where templates have already been created. And specifically, they've been created by state bar associations, commercial legal publishers like LexisNexis, for example, or even solo practitioners who have a particular skill set in the law as well as creating templates. So we describe HotDocs Market as three things. For the end user, in other words, for the subscriber, it's a workflow efficiency tool. In other words, it allows you to subscribe to templates that have been created by legal professionals and authoritative professionals to then work that into your workflow to create operational efficiency, deliver value for the clients, and mitigate your risk because you're using the consistent forms over and over again. For publishers, such as a state bar association, like the Nebraska State Bar Association, it is HotDocs Market is a distribution system. It allows them to bundle together templates, update those templates as needed to comply with the law, and deliver them to their subscribers. In many situations with state bar associations, they treat it as a member benefit. In other words, only members of the state bar can subscribe to this content. And then for all parties concerned, it's an e-commerce platform. The HotDocs Market has an interface which allows you to pay for your subscription using a credit card, and we, HotDocs Market, take care of that and remit the bulk of the revenue back to the author, in this case, the State Bar Association. So you could sort of think of this as like an iTunes for legal forms. Just some statistics about HotDocs Market itself. We launched in February 2015. We've had nearly 3 million site visits. There are currently 35 products on HotDocs Market with over 9,100 templates. There are currently 9,000 user licenses issued by 3,000, almost 3,400 subscribers. The demographics are quite interesting of those who are using HotDocs Market and the content on HotDocs Market. Roughly broken into thirds, 25 to 34-year-olds. They make up about 25% of the users. 34 to 44-year-olds make up about 24%, and then 45 to 54-year-olds are about 22%. The content on HotDocs Market comes from a variety of publishers, including state bar associations of Arkansas, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Minnesota, of course, Nebraska, Ohio. South Carolina is coming on later this year, Wisconsin, and New York. We do have one city bar association, the Columbus Bar. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there are also commercial publishers such as LexisNexis, and what I'm calling micro publishers. These are solo practitioners who, again, have an expertise in the law. In this case, this gentleman, Noble Forms, is an estate planning set of forms, and they've combined their knowledge of the HotDocs authoring software with their legal knowledge to produce forms that are ready to be subscribed to on HotDocs Market. Same situation for South Carolina family law. It's a divorce attorney who's created a product for conducting divorces in South Carolina. Same thing for Colorado, and then a solo practitioner in New York who provides forms across a variety of practice areas. When we look at NebDocs, so the NebDocs product that we're talking about today, there are currently 584 templates in the one product. It covers a variety of practice areas, as you'll see in a moment, one of which is the Probate System 5, a very robust probate planning system and template system, which is included as part of the subscription. There are practice manuals. The forms themselves, or the output format, is typically Microsoft Word or PDF, so that gives you a variety of options and flexibilities with the end product. It's offered to Nebraska State Bar Association members on an annual per-person subscription basis, and it's an all-you-can-eat usage model. In other words, when you subscribe to NebDocs, there is no limit in terms of the number of forms you can generate, the number of times you can use the content. It's simply as I say here, an all-you-can-eat usage model during your subscription. In terms of where the product is used, I pulled up a stats map from the most recent, about a year and a half worth of usage. And perhaps not surprising, the bulk of the usage of the NebDocs product is in Omaha and Lincoln. But you can see there are other spots where the content is used across the state. So I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to bring the actual HotDocs Market product, and we'll spend the bulk of our time today looking at this particular product, the NebDocs product here. So bear with me 1 second while I drag this in, open this up. So what you're looking at is the HotDocs Market landing page. This is where, the front page, this is where you can, if you are so inclined, spend about a minute, minute and a half learning an overview through this video here. Really where most people spend their time is on the Market tab itself. And if we click on this Market tab, you'll see that it is, if you will, almost like a shopping mall for legal forms from a variety of publishers. The NebDocs product is found on page 3, so we scroll over to 3. Right after the Minnesota, it's arranged alphabetically, if you're wondering. And if we click on NebDocs, you can see I mentioned the 584 templates covering a variety of practice areas. If you click on the Library tab, you can see all the various practice areas that are covered. Family law, for example, going all the way to adoption forms. You can see how many forms are there, divorce forms, etc. If you aren't sure, so it's the form, if a certain form is covered, you can go to the Library tab here, or the search bar here, and let's just say divorce, and it will show you which forms have the name divorce in them. As mentioned, Probate System 5 is part of this subscription, and I will do a brief demo on this and other forms as we go through today's webinar. Now notice I haven't had to spend anything. I haven't purchased anything at this point. That's because it's free to browse HotDocs Market, and it's free to browse the names of the titles on the NebDocs product itself. So again, no transaction has occurred. But let's say you decide, yep, I do want to make a subscription. It's $199 per year per user. So if you have an attorney and 2 paralegals and you want everyone to have a copy, you would purchase 3 copies of NebDocs. So what you would do is you would simply click on this and add NebDocs to your cart. And I'll show what that looks like in just a moment. And you would proceed just as if you had any other Amazon.com type transaction. You enter your name, your address, the credit card details, and away you go. The registration page looks something like this. You'll put your first name, your last name, you'll create a password, you'll want to confirm that password, and then enter your email address. Now it's important that you use the email address that as the subscriber, not necessarily all the users. So in that scenario that I provided just a second ago about the attorney and 2 paralegals, if the attorney is purchasing the product, the NebDocs product, make sure that you use the email address on file or make sure you use the email address that you have on file with the Nebraska State Bar Association, because that's how you will be able to purchase this product. As mentioned, it is, in this case, a members-only product. So let me just show you real quick. And therefore, you have to use that email address that you have on file with the Nebraska State Bar in order for the transaction to go through. It's incumbent that the subscriber is a member of the Nebraska State Bar. So the end users, if you buy multiple licenses, they don't necessarily have to be members, but those subscribing and paying the bill, they have to be a member of the bar. So let's go ahead and log in. So once I've made my purchase, I'll be prompted to log in. Sorry about that. And we'll go ahead and sign in. And the first thing you'll see is your working session. This is essentially your desktop. And I'll show you some of the other pieces of this, but I'll just spend just a few minutes on talking about the working sessions. This is a way to track what you've been working on, whether it's in progress or completed. You'll see this here. I chose, my default is to show all the items that I've been working on, whether they're in progress or completed. But you can, if you so choose, sort them by the status. In other words, have they been completed or are they in progress, etc. Within the HotDocs Market service here, the tool, you'll see my account. This is probably something you use virtually every time you come in, and some other elements here which I'll go through once we complete some of the demos of the forms themselves. One thing to note as part of today's demo, I have subscriptions to all the content. So most folks, when they sign, they're not going to have all these images or all these products. You'll probably more than likely have one or two, depending on your practice area. So we have a question in here. Does the subscription allow only to access NebDocs? What if you practice in more than one state jurisdiction? Can you get access to other HotDocs products for other markets? You can. So it's a one-to-one subscription. In other words, you are subscribing to one product. So let's say you work in Nebraska and in Iowa. You can buy it would be two separate transactions, but they would all live within your HotDocs Market account. Hope that answers the question there. Okay, so once we have logged in, we can now go to our subscriptions, and let's look at Nebraska here, the NebDocs product. So click on that product, and as you can see, as we saw before, there are a plethora of practice areas and plethora of forms, 584 to be precise, that we can look at. So today, I'm going to look at, let's do this. Let's look at real estate, family law, and specific family, let's look at adoption. We'll look at guardianships. I do want to show you the practice manuals, and then we'll spend a bit of time on probate system 5. So let's go ahead and let's look at real estate first. So we click on the tab that we might need, and let's do an eviction since this is right here, and let's do a why don't we do notice of failure to comply. So we'll just click this. I'm just randomly choosing this. So once you find the form you want, you're prompted to name this working session. Now you can name this whatever you want. It's completely up to you. You can put the client names. Let's just do Bruce Banner. And I'm just using some comic book names for memories, or to liven this up a bit. So it's Bruce Banner, failure to notice, failure to comply with 1430-day notice, and then names the form. Again, you can change this to whatever you need, however you name your matters within your practice. You then click on the button that says Create New Session. This now brings up the this brings up the interview process I mentioned before. So this is where we'll start to see the interview questions, or the prompting for additional questions here. And unfortunately, my laptop is running a little slow today. I'll try that again. Let's try a different one.
Thank you. That's good. It's good.
Oh, that's a little embarrassing. It's not coming up as quick. So I tell you what, we'll do something different here. We will go back to one that we were working on before here. So we'll look at this guardianship one that's in progress, and then we'll go back to the other one. So my apologies for the interview session failure. There we go. And again, I apologize. I think it has to do more with my home. I'm a home-based employee. I think it has to do more with my home Wi-Fi. So anyways, so in this scenario, we were doing a guardian, conservator. I just created some names here. Reed Richards. I'm kind of doing a mix of Marvel and DC characters as part of this demo when I put in names here. So we enter the client's name here. We put the additional details. So for example, the home number. If you have an email address, so say Richards at fantastic4.com. And we use these navigation buttons below to move to the next screen, or you can click on the panel here to your left. It's a matter of preference. I personally prefer to use the nav buttons down below, but it's completely up to you. You'll notice here that the counties in Nebraska have all been pre-populated, so you simply just choose the drop-down menu. We'll name the name of the ward, Johnny Storm, if you know the probate number, and then you decide if Reed Richards is the guardian or the conservator or both. The distinction or the interesting component to this is, depending on how you answer, various clauses associated with this form will come into play depending on how you answer these questions. So for the sake of demo today, I've chosen both. So then we'll move on to the next one. So where's the business of our guardian or conservator? Again, I just made this up. The name of the employee, occupation. So let's put the name of the employer. Let's put a proper name here. Let's see. Marvel Comics, again, just making up silly things here. Occupation, superhero, and then we put the dates of our client here. In this case, you can manually enter this. So if I want to say January 2nd, 1960, for example, I can type that in, or I can use the calendar icon. If I click here, I can use these arrows to change the year, the month, etc. So I'm going to stick with what I typed in there. Place of birth, just say New York, New York. I've made up a Social Security. Where's the driver's license? We'll put a fake number here. And then we scroll through to the next field here, or the next dialog box. So we put Susan's Reed's name. She's a homemaker. And actually, no, we'll say superheroine. And we'll create a phone number for her. And then we move to the next dialog. Again, you can sort of see how this goes. I'm going to skip some of these for the sake of time because I do want to get to some of the other forms that are on this service. Let's go to the relatives. Name of the first relative, say Ben Grimm. We'll create a fake phone number for him. Street address, 123 Front Street. Let's say he's in Omaha. Zip code 64811. Just making up some zip codes here. Name of the second relative. I have no idea here. We'll say Franklin Richards. We'll create a phone number for him. And again, I'll skip some of these. We'll just put 2 relatives for today's demo. Date of notarization, you can leave it blank. Here's a little shortcut for you. If you are going to use today's date, if you type the letter T and then use the tab, it will automatically fill in today's date. So the county that's going to be notarized in, again, it has all the pre-populated with all the counties in Nebraska. I'm just choosing one randomly. And then once we're done with all of our questions, we move to here, and it'll give us a warning if we've left anything blank, as we have. However, that won't stop you from completing the document. One thing to note, you can preview the document before you assemble it. So if I click on this spyglass icon here, document preview, it will show me what I'm about to produce in a Word format. Remember, once you've previewed it, you have to go back to interview to move to the next dialog screen. But let's go ahead and finish the interview, and I'll show you how this works. So now the HotDocs system is marrying all the information we just provided in these answer dialogues to the underlying template that was crafted by the Nebraska State Bar, or a forms committee on the Nebraska State Bar. So you click on Word, it's going to open the document. I'll drag this in from the other window. And you can see that this has been nicely formatted and is ready to go. There's the name of our award here, Johnny Storm, etc. Now, if you say, you know what, I need to provide some additional details because I'm missing relative to or their name and address, you can always go back into the interview by clicking on this Return to Interview. And it will allow you to then make any changes to the output document, which you can then just reassemble. So I don't have to retype any of the information. I can go straight to the relative dialog, put his address in, Water Street. Again, just creating a fake address here, etc. And I can save the answers. I can preview the document once again. It just depends on what or I can reassemble this. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and save this manually, but please note the system, the HotDocs market system automatically saves your data every 30 seconds. So if you have to answer a phone call, step away from your desk, whatever the situation may be, your data will be saved, but you do have the option to manually save the information. So it's saved as we speak. I'm going to go ahead and finish the interview, and as you'll see in just a moment, where we just added the additional information, we now have a new document, or an updated document, I should say, that's available for downloading, opening. So just like that, we made our changes, and there's the change we made for Front Street. Now, some people may say, you know what, I want to make some changes to this document itself. With HotDocs Market System, you are able to edit the output document. So let's say I want to change, I'll be dramatic here, I'll choose everything. I want to change the font. You know, I prefer, since we're using comic book characters, I'll use Comic Sans MS as the font. Nevertheless, the point being that you can make changes to this. You can make changes to the language, etc. But note, you're making changes on the output document. You're not able to make changes back up to the template itself. That was crafted by the Nebraska State Bar Association. So just keep that in mind. Again, you can make changes to the output document, but not to the original underlying template. So I'm going to close that. Now, once we're done with our document, we go back to that home page by going, you have three options or three locations. You can go back to My Account. You can click here, My Account here, My Account here. All three will take you back to the same location. In other words, this front page. And if you notice, we have our guardianship document here. We just completed it 1 minute ago. So let's look at some more forms. Oh, and by the way, this does allow you to make changes. You can reopen these documents. You can rename them, etc. You can delete them. I'm going to, for the sake of the demo today, show you how you delete. You just click on that word. And now that Bruce Banner one, the one that failed to launch, has been deleted. So let's go back into NebDocs and let's look at some other ones. So we did guardianship. Let's look at family law. And we'll come back to that real estate one in just a moment here. So family law, let's look at, why don't we do adoption forms? So we'll do, let's see. Let's do a petition for adoption. Actually, you know what, let's do a decree of adoption. Let's do it that way. There we go. So the decree of adoption form. And again, you can search for these specific forms if you need. I just happen to realize or know where this one is. So let's look at decree of adoption. And we're going to name this working session. We're going to call this the Richard Grayson. So we'll create a new session. You'll see the NebDocs logo pop up. And now we start to answer, like we did for the guardianship or conservatorship form, we do the exact same thing. So we'll just choose a county here, just randomly picking one, randomly putting in for today's demo an adoption case number. What are the names of the petitioners? So again, we'll use comic book characters, Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle. Name of the adopted child, Richard Grayson. So Batman and Catwoman are adopting Robin here. On what day was the child born? So again, I'll just show you, we'll use the calendar icon this time. You click on the icon, change the year that the child was born. Just say he was born 2002. And we'll use, actually we'll use a future month here. Let's say October 3rd. So he's a Halloween child. Move to the next dialog. Name of the adoptive mother, Selena Kyle. Bruce Wayne is the name of our adoptive father. And again, if you recall, depending on how you answer these options, these radio buttons, you say no, you'll notice that this goes to a slightly grayed out component here. If I click yes, it's prompting me to name the judge. So we'll just say pursuant to Nebraska statute 43102, the county has jurisdiction over the child, and so the judge will be, I'm making this up, Judge Judy. So we then move to our next dialog box, and again, this pure personal preference. You can use the elements here. I just prefer the arrows here myself. Is it in the best interest of the minor child that the communication contract agreement be approved by this court? Yes or no? That will depend. That will generate certain clauses within our final document. Is the minor child a ward with special needs? Have they agreed to provide an adoption subsidy in this case? Let's say no. And is the legal name of the adopted child to be changed? We'll say no in this case. Actually, you know what? We'll say yes. The adopted child shall be known by and bear the name of Richard Wayne. We'll just change it to Bruce Wayne's last name. So we just move on to the judge dialog. Where was the baby born? Let's just say New York. We'll choose our drop-down menu here for the various states. Say New York, New York. The date of this order, we're going to leave that one blank for today's demo. So then we click on the next dialog. It warns us we have one unanswered question. There's our unanswered question right there. It doesn't prevent the document from being assembled. And away we go. Oops. Sorry about that. Boy, this is just not working well for me on. There it is. So it opens up Microsoft Word, and here's our adoption form. So we left this blank. And once again, if you choose to change the language that the Nebraska State Bar has created or used, so it's therefore ordered. So let's say I don't like the word therefore, I just want to delete it. You can make those changes right there on the fly on your finished document, and away you go. Now, much like any document, I can email this, I can save it, I can print it, whatever I might need for my client. Now note, only in the HotDocs market system, only the answers are saved in the HotDocs market system. So the final document you would save to your desktop, or if you have a content management system, you have a way of saving that form to some other drive. Maybe it's a Dropbox drive. Again, the final document, these Word documents that we created this afternoon, those will be saved again separately, but the answers you provided, in this case we did Selena Kyle and Richard Wayne and Bruce Wayne, all that would be saved in your HotDocs account, allowing you to then rerun these documents. Because this is browser-based, HotDocs Market is browser-based, you can use this on any device with a web browser. So if you are, say, visiting at the adoption agency, you can bring an iPad and actually fill out those forms right there on the fly. So again, another nice flexible component to HotDocs Market and to NebDocs. Okay, so we did a real estate form, or we're about to do a real estate form. We did guardianship, we did an adoption. One thing to make you aware of in the NebDocs product, I think it's actually quite interesting, is that the the Bar Association has also included practice manuals. So these are not HotDocs templates, rather these are PDFs. So keeping on the theme of adoption, if I click on this adoption procedures, understanding adoption procedures, this will allow me to download the manual that's included as part of the subscription through the HotDocs market system, and allows me to open up this adoption document, this 307-page manual from the Nebraska State Bar Association. With this, you could use a lot of paper, but you could print this off if you so chose, download it to your desktop, etc. So again, it has all the information contained in that version. And one of the nice things about HotDocs Market is when there's an update to this this practice manual, or a template for that matter, you as a subscriber receive those updates automatically. So you can practice knowing that you are using the most recent version of the template or the practice manual. Sort of a nice feature, and at $199, not a bad deal. It allows you, as I say, to practice with confidence, knowing that you have the most recent version of the forms. Let's try that real estate form again. Let's see if we can get one to go. So let's do, let's try eviction again, and we'll just do 14-day notice. I'm just trying this out here. So we'll try Bruce Banner, AKA the Hulk. We'll create a new session. One of the questions while we're waiting for this to load, let's see, it's a new question here. The probate manual is not included. Is there a possibility it will be in the future? That's a good question. That's a question for the Nebraska State Bar Association. My recommendation is to speak with Sam Clinch, and I'll provide his email address at the end of the presentation. Okay, so our real estate form did load, provides a notice here, or the notes. So now we start to walk through the tenant title, and much like we saw on some of the other forms, we just put the information in just like this. Okay, section of the lease or rental agreement is breached as follows. So let's just make something of this. Section 4, section 4.3, we'll just create this. And we'll then say the nature of the breach. Since Bruce Banner is the Hulk, wanton destruction of rental property, loss of use. I'm just making these things up here. And what will be on notice to avoid a future breach, repair damage, and don't get angry. Making this up as we go along. Date of former notice, again, calendar icon, or you enter it manually. 05/01/2018. Let's say this something happened last month. What date are they required to vacate the premises? Let's just say today's date. And then date of today's notice. Actually, probably I need to change that. It probably would be, let's make it the 30th, by the end of this month. Move to the next dialogue, the attorney information. This is where you would put your information in as an attorney. So I'll just use my name here for the sake of the demo. LLC, my firm number, we'll make something up. Street address, again, I'll make something up. Comic Street, city of the attorney, Omaha. And again, we just go through like you've seen in some of these other dialogues here. Let's see, Nebraska. And my phone number, we'll just make something up. Okay, and then we move to our last dialogue. And it will now assemble the document. Again, just like you've seen before. And the reason I'm showing this over and over again is just to get you familiar with the process and to show you how straightforward it is to actually create documents from the 584 templates that are included as part of your subscription. So this is still pulling up the form, the 14-day notice form. I'm going to close one of those adoption forms here. I won't save it. Close the guardianship form. I won't save that. There we go. There's our compliance. Fairly straightforward document here. But again, you have that ability to enable, edit, change the font, change the breach, etc. If you so choose. And again, if I need to make changes, I just simply return to the interview. It will then allow me to jump in and make changes as necessary. Okay, so I want to close the demo portion of this by looking at Probate System 5. I know that is a pretty robust and popular part of the NebDocs product, so I'll spend a bit of time going through this. This one's a little more, takes a little more effort to create these, but it's really useful once you get going. The very first thing it's critical is to click on Set Up Firm Contracts and Judge for Probate Templates. This has to be done first. So when you're using Probate System 5, click on this part here, Set Up Firm. What it'll allow you to do is edit the answer source. What I mean by that is it allows you to put your information as an attorney, as well as download all the current list of judges and in the Nebraska system, on the probate system, so that you have the option to select the right judge. So in this case, I just made up the name of a firm, Dewey Morrison Smith. If there's multiple offices, you can make those changes. You identify the number of attorneys. So here's the firm office. For example, here's the firm attorneys. Again, I entered these prior to this, to today's demo. You can scroll through these as as we've seen before with the other components here. Address of the office, make any changes. Here's the name of our attorney. Let's say it's not Sarah, let's say it's Sasha doing, just for the sake of demo here. You have the option to name the title for the individual, initials, things like this. And you can add additional attorneys. You can also add the staff for the firm. So I put three different staff members with each with their own title and their own role. The firm preferences. The program tips identify elements to help you conclude or create the probate or work you through the probate system. That's why in some ways it's set as a default, but you can choose no program tips if you desire. And then if you have preferences, if you want the telephone prefix, you can make it in the word phone instead of telephone. It's completely up to you, etc. Fax, email, etc. Contact manager. You can check or revise the details on the contacts. And if you scroll through, if there's a newspaper that's used, you can make those details available. And then perhaps the more important piece is the click to load the judge information. If you click on this button, it will load the various judges, as you'll see in just a second. So Adams, and you can see down to the left here how many for the various judges and the various counties that have been pre-populated. So it saves you the time of having to create all that data that's already pre-populated for you when you subscribe and use this system. So once you're done with that, you simply assemble the form, and that now has preloaded all the data up front for this probate system. We then go back to my account, go back to NebDocs, go to our Probate System 5, and we're going to open up a new probate file. In the interest of time, I'm going to preload, I have one already created, so I'm going to upload a file here just to show you how this works. Typically you can find the answers are saved, it's called a HotDocs answer file. Again, I'm going to use this test probate system here, and I'll begin the interview. Probate System 5 is pretty robust. In some ways, we could probably have a separate webinar just on using Probate System 5. But for today's webinar, I'll just give you a quick overview. So we added a lot of details for our probate here. The name of the attorney, the paralegal, and all this data was pre-entered, just like we did for the Dewey and Marsden firm. This file has been created for a separate firm. The light bulb here, if you click on View Resources, there you'll see some additional details if you need. You can generate blank forms if you need, or you can append a commentary at the end of the form. And what I'll show you how to do that is in just a second. But for today's sake, we're going to move to the interested party. You can adjust the interested party. So this is the last entity, Nebraska Medicine, but let's say we have one more. We'll add an interested party. So we'll say it's the Humane Society of Omaha. We'll say it's an entity. It is, in terms of the role, it is, let's just say it's a charity here. Oops. So we'll click there. And then we have to put all the information in about our charity. I'm just going to type gibberish here for the sake of today's demo here. I won't fill in all the details here. Nebraska County, we'll just choose one randomly. Okay. So there's not any personal representative. Again, I'll just go through here. So they'll just get select matters here. Okay. So then we will assemble the document, and now this has added all this data back in. So let's go back to the interview. And now to actually open the probate and start assembling some of the forms, we use this feature in HotDocs called Use Another Template. So we have all this data. We're going to use another template. And this allows me to, as I say, use additional forms. You click on Add a new template. Scroll to our Nebraska NebDocs product. Again, you probably won't have the same sort of volume of forms that I have here, so it'll be a little bit faster than this. We click on Probate System 5, and let's do Open Probate. So let's choose informal testing, and we'll use Form 220, application for a probate. So now what's happening is the HotDocs market system is changing the template, but it's applying the data that we have already filled in, and it's going to put it in the appropriate spaces on this Form 220. And as I say, typically it's a little bit faster. I think this has to do with my internet speed today in my house. While we're waiting, if there's other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Make sure I've answered all the ones that have come up so far. Yep, looks like we've had all the questions answered. In the interest of time, we may not be able to do this because I do want to finish up the presentation, but what will happen, as I say, when the template is changed, the HotDocs system takes the data and applies it within the various fields and the various appropriate categories for the document, allowing you to generate the form. There it goes. Oh, thought it was going to go. Okay, well, I'm going to jump back into the presentation, and I'll switch back to the template once it's loaded up. So bear with me 1 second while I launch this. Okay. So The HotDocs market is the only document assembly platform in the cloud, providing an authoritative set of templates. And again, you saw how the 584 templates. The content is accurate and up to date. Whenever there's a change to the template or the practice manuals, the Nebraska bar makes those changes, uploads them to you, the subscriber, and you get an email saying, hey, this form you're using has now been updated. As mentioned, it is browser-based, and so you can use the content anytime, anywhere, on any device with a web browser. It is fast, despite some of the hiccups we saw today. It is a fast way of creating documents. It is, I would say, it generates cost and time savings. So instead of having to create multiple documents and use the control, find, replace, and the method we saw before, the current method of renaming and modifying, the NebDocs process saves you a lot of time. And I'd argue it's affordable. It's $199 per user per year. That comes to $16.50 or $16.60 per month, or 55 cents a day. And because you are using standardized templates and you're providing data on a consistent basis, it does help you reduce errors. And then we talked about some of those errors before. When we look at Abacus as an organization, we are having a conference in July. I know it's a bit short notice here, but if you'd like to learn more about Abacus, particularly the private cloud, as well as the practice management products like Amicus Attorney, certainly HotDocs and HotDocs Market, which you've just seen today, we'd like to invite you to attend this show. It's July 9 through 11 and next month at Planet Hollywood in Vegas. And your bar association has been useful, or has been helpful in the sense that they have secured a 50% discount for members of the Nebraska Bar Association. You simply go to abacusmaximus.com and enter NebBar50 and you'll get a discount. But just before we end, I'm going to see if that template still hasn't loaded. So one last thing to look at here. Let's go ahead and stop that. So when we look at HotDocs Market, let's go ahead and refresh. Okay. I'm just going to close that out. If we look at some of the housekeeping features of this, if you click on the tab Transaction History, you can see what you've purchased. If you click on the icon, the document icon, you'll see the how much you've spent on the product and when it renews. You can update your credit card details through this tab here. Content sharing, if you have more than one, oops, sorry about that. Clicked a little too high there. Content sharing allows, if you have more than one license, you can assign it and revoke it from certain individuals if you so choose. Through this feature here, content sharing, you simply click on the product, you click on manage sharing, and you can revoke and then invite others to use if you revoke that individual's access to the content you've subscribed to. Connected applications, this is a forthcoming feature on HotDocs Market. We hope to be able to, or we plan to be able, I should say, to work with practice management components, obviously Abacus Abacus and Amicus Attorney, to be able to pull in data from the client management system into HotDocs Market. Again, that's a forthcoming feature. The My Details tab allows you as the user to update any details as a subscriber, I should say. So you can update your business address, mailing address, change your password, create an alias email address, etc. And of course, update your credit card details through this feature here. Finally, as part of a subscriber, you have access to customer support. Our customer support team is based in our Utah office. It's manned from 9 a.m. Eastern to 7 p.m. Eastern. You can contact them via phone or by email. They are native English speakers, and they can help you with questions regarding the HotDocs market system. If you have questions regarding the content, as I say, that's probably better sent to the Nebraska Bar Association. And the Nebraska Bar can be contacted, or the contact of the Nebraska Bar is Sam Clench Sam is, I believe he's the VP there at the Nebraska bar. His email address is sclench@nebar.com. My address, if you have questions about HotDocs Market or Abacus Next, is jhoy@abacusnext.com. And I want to thank you for your time today. My apologies for the hiccup on the one template, but I think overall you got the impression of how this works and how it can make you more efficient as an attorney. Thanks once again, and I hope to speak with you soon. Take care.